All right, we'll get started here. I'm Pat Broadus.
I'm Danvers Child.
We're talking today about better business practices and what it actually cost us to shoe a horse. And I think a lot of times we don't stop and think about what it cost us to do the work. So Pat and I have been messing with this for about a year now. And so basically what we're here to do today is to depress you. Sorry.
Be shots of whiskey when you leave here. You know, and everybody tries to figure out, like, what should I charge? What should I charge? I think before you know what you should charge, you should know what it costs you to shoe a horse. And the interesting thing that we found comparing our businesses is when we went through this, we run two totally different businesses. I mean, there's nothing alike about the whole thing. And when we got into this and really got to looking at the numbers, we're not that far apart. You know, it's kind of weird that the way that we run our businesses, we're really, you know, we're within, you know, a few dollars of each other. Yeah. You know.
And the idea is that with, you know, the price of coffee. So you look at Starbucks and you look at the Summit Cafe, and I like the Summit Diner. What's the difference between the price of coffee at these places? And I think that it comes down to a matter of focus and specialization. What does Starbucks sell? They sell coffee. You can buy an expensive cup to put it in. You might buy a little croissant to go with it, but they sell coffee. And so what does the diner sell? They sell breakfast. Coffee's extra. So you go one place, they're specialized, they're focused. It's going to cost you $5 a cup. You go to the other place, it's going to cost you 75 cents. Mm-hmm. So, and that gets into the idea of cost. And in production, retail, accounting, cost is the value of the money that has been used up to produce something or to deliver a service. And it's not available anymore. And so I think that a lot of times what we do is we cheat ourselves on what it actually cost us to produce that service. And so what we've got to do is look at the cost per unit. And that's the cost per unit is the idea that we're looking at what it cost us to shoe a horse. Mm-hmm. And so Pat and I broke it down into our different practices, and as he said, they're very different. Pat's shoeing primarily runners.
Thoroughbred race horses.
Yeah. And he's working on the track. He's not only is he working on the track, he's working on a lot of tracks. So you go to New Orleans?
Yep. Yeah, I travel around, and typically, you know, throughout the year, I will shoe horses at 5 or 6 or 7 different racetracks throughout the country. You know, so I've got a lot of costs going back and forth. You know, I've got rent going back and forth. I've got those different things that some people may not incur, you know, but others will. And that's when we kind of got to comparing our practices. You know, I think it was a good thing to focus on because, you know, you got to see from 2 different perspectives on what goes on, you know, and what we're doing on this, it's based on mine and Danvers practice. And we're not telling you this is the numbers for your practice. We're just kind of giving you a guideline of how to figure out what the numbers are for your practice. You know, and some of you are going to look at this and say it's not right. Some of you are going to look at you, say, you know, that's got to be wrong. I don't care if you lie to me. You can tell me whatever you want to about what it cost you to shoe a horse. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to your spouse. Don't lie to your kids. You know, figure out what it truly cost you to get it done. And when you go through this and people's going to say, you're going to see some of the numbers and you're going to say, well, that's not what it cost me for shoes. It's not what it costs for shoes. It's what it costs to keep the supplies in that truck and shoe that horse, you know, and keep that horse shod. Because when people start figuring out, like the cost of shoes, cost of nails, cost of those different things, they don't take into account the one that you had to fix. the supplies that you bought that are sitting in your truck that's dead inventory. It's what it costs you to keep that horse shod, not what it is to shoe that horse, because that's the true cost that it gets into, and that's the cost of doing business.
So as we look at this, keep in mind that we are very different, that Pat's running, he's plating thoroughbreds on the tracks. He may be in New Orleans doing it. He may be in Lexington doing it, or Louisville. And whereas my practice, I'm shoeing mostly dressage horses, and I'm typically no more than 45 miles from my house. I'm running back and forth between Lafayette, Indiana, and Indianapolis for the most part. And so I'm tied much more to a specific geographic area. So we broke it down into 8 categories. And the first category is, and by the way, the numbers here are, my numbers are for a 2-year period with an average of 100 full sets, and yours is for
Mine's on a 6-year average of Broadus Brothers, and it is done on 140 head of horses shot a month, and mine are on a 4-week schedule, and it's in, kind of that month time period. I usually do around 140 a month, and that's kind of what it averaged out to be. So if you take a 6-year average on your business, and everything that we do, either it'll go on a credit card, everything's accounted for. My wife is great about that, making sure that everything's accounted for. So when you start figuring in a 6-year average, you're getting pretty dang true numbers, because those are figuring out the shoes that, that you bought that one trainer thought that he wanted, that I went and bought 120 sets of, and he decided on the second set that he didn't want them anymore. They're still sitting in my garage, and how many of you out there have a pile of stuff at the house sitting there that you're never going to use? When it gets into it, that's the cost of doing business.
So when I first started learning from Pat, it was very much an eye opener. And like I say, his numbers are for 6 years. My numbers are much shorter span because they're 2-year period. And it's simply since I started trying to learn how to run a business, because for 45 years, I was a farrier. And for the last 5 years, I've been trying to become a small business owner. And I'm still a farrier, but I'm recognizing very late that I have to stop and realize, first and foremost, I'm a small business owner. I own a business, I run a business, and I have to keep it functioning and properly alive. So I'm learning from this man. So my numbers are 2 years, his numbers are 6. So if you look at this, I'm buying, I'm shoeing dressage horses. I'm buying care carts, workmans, steel shoes. I've used very few aluminums. And in some respects, I don't really belong at this venue because I think I've got one horse in a bar shoe. I don't have anything in wedges. I'm kind of weird. I've got a lot of basic shoe jobs.
Bad part is plating up race horses. I don't have a wedge on anything,
Yeah.
My bar shoes are very minimum, but I think a lot of people can relate to that sort of business plan,
So we're looking at basic open-heeled shoeing, regular shoeing, nothing extra, and a full set for Pat is $14.45. For me, it's $13.40, and that's the average that I'm spending on shoes.
Yeah, and that's what it, when I go back to saying, that's what it costs to keep that horse shod. That's not what it cost me to buy shoes for one horse. That's what it averages out to keep that horse shod. And the same with the nails. You look and you say, I don't use $2.50 in nails. What about the one that the horse run over and knocked your box over? What about the ones that you bend? What about the ones you have to use to replace shoes? What about the ones that get rusty? There's all of us have stuff that we throw away in our rig that goes south for one reason or the other, or you got a box and you simply didn't like them. You know, I mean, how many times have you bought a couple of boxes of nails and you're like, it's cost of doing business.
So our disposables, for the most part, shoes, nails, rasp. You look at that fly spray and hoof polish, and when I first looked at Pat's fly spray cost, I thought, boy, that's inflated. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that he's using it year round, going to New Orleans and
you
traveling.
Think about the fly spray also, and you know, that's hoof polish in there too, but like with the fly spray, how many times have you bought a brand new bottle, left it at the barn? You know, how many times the horse owner grabbed it and used it? I fly spray almost every horse I work on because I am in the South in the winter, you know, so I use more than others. How much have you spilled? You know, when you're filling up a new bottle, how much is on the ground? How much when it dumps over in your truck and it runs out? You know, that's things that we don't think about, but it is part of it.
And then under miscellaneous supplies, you've got propane, brushes, sanding discs, drill bits, taps, bar stock, all kinds of disposables that again don't match up a whole lot between our practices. Where you know I'm doing quite a few fox hunters and eventers as well as my dressage horses. I drill and tap a lot. You probably don't drill and tap.
And I don't fit
once
much
a month.
You know, I don't. My propane cost is nowhere as close to what yours is.
Yeah.
But when you look at the numbers on those miscellaneous, you know, it comes out. But I'm buying more stretch wrap and super glue than he is.
Yeah. And so then we go to tool replacement, and we broke that down in terms of hand tools, shoe and box type concerns, and then what's on the truck: grinders, drill presses, punches, pritchels, handles, those sorts of items.
And one thing I want to go over with that too on the tool replacement things, I typically have help. I do more horses than Danvers practice does, but when you have help, it costs you more than what it does because, you know, I know when I have help, they break bits, you know, they break pritchels, they break punches, they break things that I have to replace, you know. But that's one of the things that I take into, you know, when I have help, is to make sure that, you know, I have that stuff for them to break. Because I got to do it, you know.
As a farrier, and I thought about what an apron cost when I bought it. I never thought about the fact that it cost me $1 a day to wear it.
Well, you thought about it, you bought it, and it cost you one horse to pay for it, and that was that. I think we get caught up in that a lot, too.
We do get caught up in that, and I lived on that for years, the idea of, oh, well, that's only going to cost me one shoe job. Hey, oh, I want that. I can do 2 trims and have it paid for. No. That's looking at gross instead of looking at net. Mm-hmm. That's looking at that trim as if it were pure profit, and it's not. And we've got to stop and recognize that. So when you get through that whole first category, it costs Pat, for supplies and disposables, $27.40. It cost me $26.03.
You know, so running 2 totally different practices.
Completely different concepts. Aluminum plates versus steel
Everything's
shoes.
new that I'm putting on, you know.
Yeah, completely different, but very close to the same amount. Our second category is the truck and the rig. And I thought I'd really come out ahead of him here, and because I'm driving an old 7.3 diesel from 1999, and I don't have a truck payment. And I've got my trailer that I've had I bought it here 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It's paid for. I thought, boy, I'm in great shape. Pat's driving a fairly new truck.
Mm-hmm. Year and a half old. You know, with a rig on the back of it that's the same age. You know, but I've got to have something because of my business. I'm running up and down the road. And everybody says, well, you can drive a truck that's paid for. I can, but I can't drive a truck that has trouble. Whenever I've got clients, and then literally I have clients, sometimes they're 800 miles apart. I've got to get in that rig and get there, and then I've also got to know it's going to get me home to my wife and kids. So that is where I kind of have to have one. Everybody says, well, you can do whatever, but in my practice, I've tried to ride that fine line, and it just hadn't paid for me in the end.
So, I thought I'd really save a lot on him there, but I didn't save too much because my maintenance goes up by having the older vehicle. Mm-hmm. My mileage is in the same ballpark, but I'm paying insurance for two trucks and a trailer. He's paying insurance for one truck, and then I'm also over a 10,000 pound limit, and so I've got USDOT concerns and that I have in there that I have to cover as well. So I come out saving a little bit of money, but not much. I was shocked when I realized that his new vehicle wasn't costing him that much more than it was costing me. I thought I was saving a bunch there. For our third category, we went to employees and support services. And we're both using bookkeepers and accountants, and neither one of us had legal fees during this time period, but those are something that occasionally come into play. Pat is using employees, and I'm using contract labor. So again, very radically different.
Yeah. And with my employees, everybody looks at that, and that's $22 a horse. That is not an expensive employee. That is a $300 a week guy when I'm paying his rent and his board. So in the end, I think everybody looks and figures out, well, I'm going to pay him 20%, or I'm going to pay him 10%, or I'm going to pay him so much a horse. Whenever you're truly running an employee, there's a lot of costs that come along with it. It's not what it costs on that paycheck. It's what it costs the company to have that person. And I think that kind of gets lost a lot too, because I've got to have insurance on him. I've got to pay workman's comp on him or her. So I think that gets a little lost. They look at, well, I give him a check at $300 at the end of the week. That's not what it costs you. It costs you more than that.
So, and I'm using contract labor. It probably wouldn't hold up in a court of law. It's impossible for us to meet the guidelines for using contract labor. And I don't think anybody in the Farrier business can get away with it if you had to go into a court of law and try to defend it. So I'm cheating. That's basically what it comes down to.
And we're kind of rolling through this right now. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or?
If you are working for someone, and then you're either an employee or a contract laborer or an intern. And the way that the IRS and the government view that, the intern, we try to say, we've got an intern or an apprentice. And sorry, the IRS and the government don't have any allowances for that. The only way you can be an intern is to be a student, and the only way you can be a student is for there to be a legitimate school. And so unless you're working for a school that is recognized as an educational institution, you can't really be an intern or an apprentice. And so that leaves you with either an employee or contract labor. And most Farrier businesses try to run contract labor. And we think we can get away with it, and we think we're legal with it, and we're not. Because we have all these ideas of what is legal for contract labor. And the biggest idea is, well, he has his own tools, and he can do the work, and so therefore he's using his own tools, and he's contract labor. No,
And it does work until it doesn't work.
exactly.
And then it costs you a lot of money to figure out that it doesn't work.
The idea behind contract labor is that a contract laborer not only has his own tools and sets his own schedule, but most importantly, he is considered to be capable of and competent to do the work without any supervision whatsoever. And so that means that I have to, for me to use a contract laborer, I have to say, this project has a deadline of such and such a date, and I'm contracting you to do it, and you do it however you want to get it done within the parameters. And so I'm sending you out, and I don't need to supervise you. And most of us can't send out our helper and expect him to be accepted by our clients to make the decisions, or be us to have a confidence in him or her to go out and do that. Now, the help that I'm using right now, I can do that. He's been with me for 5 years. And my clients love him. He does great work. I trust him to go and do whatever. So at this point in time, I could probably get by calling him the contract laborer and be legal with it.
But you're also 5 years into that?
But we're 5 years in.
Yeah.
And for the first 3 years, I didn't trust him to do it. My clients didn't trust him to do it. For the 4th year, my clients probably trusted him, but I didn't. But now, he can shoe anything I got. So he is contract labor to me at this point, and I am legal. But I flew by the seat of my pants and was illegal for the first 4 years with him. And when he leaves me and I have to get somebody else, I'm either going to have to be legal and employ that person and do the FICA and so forth, or I'm going to be risking my business again. And I think we really are risking our business when we do these things. What else?
Danvers, either of you run the numbers to see the breaking point to where we should kind of take that risk and pay a subcontractor or actually put somebody on the payroll?
I don't know that there is a break point there for that, in the sense that you're either illegal or you're legal. And as far as putting the numbers to it, I mean, you can
Every
see the
business
numbers
practice is
here.
a little different. So, if what my numbers say, you couldn't go on, because your numbers are going to be different than mine. And a lot of it, I think, is going to determine on, quality of life and how much you really want to do. And I think that's kind of an individual business model that, and I've tried to figure out at what point, and I really can't. My business fluctuates. It does a lot of different things. But at what point do I need help, and what point do I not need help? And for me, I like security in numbers. If I've got 5 people working and we lose 50 head, we've lost 10 apiece. If I'm a single man working by myself and I lose 50 head, I've lost quite a bit. So I've found the security in numbers for me to give up a little extra money, but to have it as a big group. At one time I was running a pretty big multi-farrier practice. But I always felt for me that was okay. And if I got hurt, I had people that I could call on that would just pick up the slack and work a little bit harder till we got back up.
You had a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, regarding the criteria for subcontractors, is that universal, like set by the federal government, or does that,
Department of Labor.
so your state's Department of Labor?
No, federal.
Oh, so that should be universal then?
Yes. Yes, it does not vary from one state to another. That's straight federal Department of Labor, and it's IRS as well. So, yeah, I can't find a way around it.
I'll get him to shut up here in a minute.
When y'all were running these numbers and comparing your different numbers and stuff, did that facilitate a conversation between the two of you of like, how to do those numbers, and did it cause you to change any of your business practices?
Oh, Lord, yes. Yes. It has caused us to do It's probably caused me to change my practices more than anything. 'Cause Pat was he was running a smart business, and I was not. And I was ready to run a smart business. And I started working with Pat and trying to learn from him. And so I'm evolving and trying to learn these things.
And it's great for me to see how a different business runs, because I can look at his numbers and say, well, he's saving there and I'm not, so what can I do to help? And I think this is what this itself is about, is to say, hey, you can look at our numbers, but from there you can take it and put it however you want,
So, if in this category, the third category, employees and support services, this is our big difference. Pat is looking at almost $24 a horse, and I'm looking at $10 a horse, and so that's the first time that we've seen a discrepancy of any significant area in these categories, and it's the cost of being legit. But then we move to insurance and taxes, and we've got liability insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, and then we've got federal and state taxes, and the state taxes cover us for, we have to look at it in terms of resident and non-resident taxes. Again, this is an area where a lot of people fly and are not being legit. And I've certainly done it for many years, where I would work in a different state but not pay taxes and not pay my non-resident state taxes. And so it's something that once the IRS chooses to point their little finger at you, they'll find it.
The only difference here, if you really kind of look at it, is I have an AFLEC, policy that just short-term disability, and then the federal taxes. I have an employee, so I get to write more off. I'm running, pretty close to the same miles, but mainly I think it's the employee that I get to write off.
So he gets a write-off, and I didn't think in terms of write-offs. Not for an employee. I thought of write-offs as taking somebody out to supper.
Yeah.
But again, you look at that, and he's paying 75 cents a horse for disability insurance, and I'm running the risk of counting on you guys to come and shoe my horses when I break my leg. So it's something to think about. 75 cents a horse, pass it on, get it.
Well, and the 75 cents a horse, what it does for me also is I know that I'm not going to lose things. I know that my kids are going to get fed. I know that things are going to happen. Even, this community is great about coming to somebody's help, like it is. But a lot of times they leave you the money, and I know that I've been hurt before, and I feel bad when they leave there and they've left me all the checks, which I've done it for people before. But you kind of feel bad. But if you know your bills are paid, at least you can say, hey, here was your money to get here. Here was your supplies. Here's what it cost you. I think it just kind of gives you a little better feel-good feeling when you're covered.
You had a question?
Legally, you should be.
The question is that he's working in 4 different states in his practice, and he's asking if he's responsible for paying taxes in each of those states. And that I cannot answer, because it depends on what the states are. A lot of states, I work in Indiana, Illinois, and Kentucky. And I don't have to pay non-resident taxes for my work done in Illinois, because the state of Indiana and the state of Illinois have a reciprocal agreement. And so I don't have to deal with that. But I have to pay my non-resident taxes for the work that I do in Kentucky that when I exceed $600 of income. So once I earn more than $600, or shoe more than 3 horses in the state of Kentucky, then I have to pay non-resident, I have to file non-resident tax in that state because there's not a reciprocal agreement. So I think there are 17 or 18 states that have reciprocal arrangements, and you just have to check with the Department of Revenue in those states, and this is, if you go back to category 2, this is the reason that we pay an accountant, and because your accountant should know this, and you don't have to sit around and try to figure it out. You say, you tell your accountant, I earned this amount in this state this year, and he or she should be able to sort that out for you. But
And I know it can also go into, like in Kentucky, I pay taxes on work I do in Lexington and taxes I do in work in Louisville. It breaks down because they want their city tax. So we have to go through and figure out, how many days and how much work I did in each one. That's a reason my wife gets on to me all the time. I don't write down in my logbook of where I was. Luckily, the horses and the trainers, she can figure out, where it is. So it gets confusing.
And again, I can't add 2 plus 2 and get 4 consistently. And I used to try to do my own taxes. And then they came and knocked on my door and said, is this your house or is it ours? And we went through we're still going through a tip with them. Don't irritate the IRS. It is not worth it. So in this category, again, very disparate businesses, very significantly different approaches, and yet we're $3 apart. Yes, sir.
On your federal state taxes and stuff, how do you come to that figure on that? You take your year-end federal taxes, state taxes, added all those that you did, count the number of horses you did in a year, and come up with that figure.
Yep.
Right.
It changes on every horse.
It does.
Yeah.
And that was just my 6-year average. That was what I paid and how many horses we did and just divided it out. And
Normally, as a percent, like a 5-year-round, probably with all taxes, probably about 35%. Whatever you charge. Whatever.
and nobody thinks about taxes,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever the bill comes in.
Yep.
Right. It's like, well, 35% of that ain't mine, I guess.
Yeah. And they will come get it. They don't ask you nicely for it either.
But yeah, that goes back to that cost per unit that we started with of trying to tie it all to the 1 unit of production. Right. So then we go to our 5th category, which is miscellaneous monthly fees. Pat's paying rent in the sense that, like we started out with, he's traveling, and so he has to maintain an apartment in New Orleans during the season there, and so forth. So I thought his rent would go way up, and then I thought, wait a second, I'm paying rent for my shop, and so I had to figure that in for my shop area, and then cell phone, credit card fees. Other business expenses, bank fees, business checks, business cards, invoices, those sorts of items, and then office expenses, monthly charges for using QuickBooks or Microsoft Office or simply having the internet hookup or paying postage. So as those broke down, they were pretty similar. You can see that I pay more credit card fees. I run a lot more of my customers on pay by credit card. Probably 80% of my customers are paying by credit card. So I'm losing money every time I shoe to that credit card fee or credit card service.
And I'm 20 to 30% probably on any given year on an average of what I run on my credit card, which I'm starting to go more and more to it. It's just kind of the way it goes. But it's something to think, as the world moves that way, it's a fee that you have to pay.
So again, we're not terribly far apart there, a couple of dollars. And that, again, we're running really different businesses. So category 6 is professional image and development, advertising, marketing, sponsorship. Pat has a higher element there. He does a little more marketing and sponsoring than I do in terms of, I think you guys sponsor some jumps at shows and so forth.
Yeah.
And then clothing, hats, shirts, so forth. Continuing education, memberships and affiliations, joining and paying your dues in associations, coming to something like this. And then entertainment with clients or colleagues. You can see I'm cheap. I don't take them out.
And part of that is I'm on the road. So if I'm on the road, I'm going to take a client to dinner, or I'm going to take somebody to dinner, or we're going to go do something, or maybe, because when I'm on the road, a lot of times I work straight through the day when I get there. So in order for me to get a lunch break, I buy pizza for the barn, because I feel like they've earned it. I've put them through the ringer. We've shot a lot of horses, and it keeps people happy. Even if I buy one of my holders, everything I do, I've got a holder. I've got no cross ties. So yeah, buy a guy a sandwich or something. It's all part of it,
So again, we're not terribly far apart there for professional image and development. Then category 7 of 8, travel and entertainment. Basic travel. Again, Pat is on the road. He's got more hotel and plane expense, and he's got more per diem cost or daily cost. So that you get into that category, and he jumps me again. So, and then the final category is retirement. The idea that at some point you're not going to be doing this anymore, and it's a whole lot better off if you anticipate that and plan for it and set something back. So since I got a later start at setting things back, I'm setting a little more back.
One thing with retirement too that I kind of want you to think about, and this is your own practice, you can do whatever you want to. When we start out, there's about a 10-year period there, and this is just kind of an average that I come up with talking to people and doing different things, but there's a 10-year average where we all struggle. And you start your apprenticeship and you graduate from school, and we're shoeing horses that we don't want to shoe and doing those things. And, some of us are lucky, they build it faster. Some of it build it slower. Some of them never build it to where they, are shoeing horses and broncs their whole career. But there's about a 10-year average there. And that 10 years, you're tearing your body apart and you're doing those things, but you're learning. It's part of it. And then there's about a 12 to 15 year of a good run. Like you've got good solid work, your body's holding up, you can do a lot of things. That's your time to capitalize and make a lot of the money that you're going to need later in life. And then after that, now you're 25 years into the business. Things are starting to fail. It's starting to hurt you. You can't do that work that you used to could do. And then it starts tapering off. So we've got about, a 12 to 15 year run where we've got to make sure our numbers are right. And we've got to make sure that we're able to, and we all know those people that shot horses till they're 75 years old, but how many people do you know got hurt 6 months into the business?
Okay, we've run through our list here, and these are our actual numbers of what it cost us to shoe a horse. What do you think that the total is for mine?
Anybody?
Huh?
Throw it out there.
$100? And for Pat?
$135.
Somebody's been adding.
putting a pencil to it. So for me to shoe a horse, $114.76. For Pat to shoe a horse, $134.77. Completely different practices, completely different kind of horse, different disciplines, different approaches, and yet...
And the funny thing is, if you look at these numbers and you add Danvers in with a truck and a rig, and put an employee there, we're right on,
Yeah.
you know.
And if you simply take his employee away, he's back down to about 120, 122. But that's how much it costs us to go out and put that set of shoes on. Are you depressed?
Shots of whiskey are free.
Now, take that. You all got calculators.
Yeah, everybody grab a cell
phones.
phone in here. Open it up to the calculator. Punch in mine, 134.77. Times it times 140. Tell me what the number is. I've not made $1. I've not taken anything for myself. I have not paid a car payment. I have not paid for my kids. I have not ate.
We took out the cost, the wages for his employee,
Yeah.
but there was no wage out for him. So he hasn't made $1. He's paid his help. He hasn't paid himself. He hasn't paid his family. He hasn't taken care of anything in terms of house payments.
And we all wonder at the end of the month that, you know, we've still got a month left and the money's out. You know, we hadn't paid anything yet. It's a little bit crazy, huh?
So if you multiply that times, mine goes times 100 for a month. His goes times 140 horses for a month. And then
You want to do something a little more
and
fun?
then you do it times 12.
Yeah. Tell me what mine was. Does anybody still have it pulled up? And hit times 12 on that. There you go. Hadn't paid myself. $226,000 is what it cost to run that business. I hadn't paid myself. It's a little bit depressing, huh? And we kind of argue with each other. There's no way. There's no way. Most of us live month to month.
One of the ways that I have managed to feed myself and not do the things that are be able to operate despite this is simply by cheating. Just like I'm cheating myself right now by not carrying that disability insurance. I'm gambling. I've flown by the seat of my pants, and I've done everything from not carried health insurance to not paid the IRS, and I've done all those things that to bypass the system and still function. And I think lots of us.
How many people out here, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because I don't want to know, are really carrying insurance, are really paying taxes correctly the way they're supposed to be, and really running a business like a small business owner instead of a farrier?
Yeah. Somebody had a question here. Yes.
How much do you buddy charge for a
How much do I charge? It's costing me $115 to shoe a horse, and I average about $195 is what I charge. And I say I average that. I'm shoeing at $175 and $185 in my hometown area, but I shoe 3-4 days a week down the road, and I shoe for $215 to $225 there. So it averages out about $190, $195 over and above that $115 for me to sustain a living. But that's going to vary radically by individual and how you want to live and what it takes you to live.
Well, and the funny thing that we have found too doing this, and you find in different parts of the country, people will charge way more than they do in others. Supplies pretty much cost us the same. Why does it vary so much? Now, I know cost of living expenses, vary a little bit. But when you look at the numbers, they don't vary that much. I mean, you'll have an area where it's typical to get $250, $275 to shoe a horse, and then you'll have an area where, guys are pushing it to get $100. And if you're pushing it to get $100, you're having to cheat to get it done.
And based on doing these numbers, after having done these numbers, I don't think there's any way, and I could be wrong, you could prove me wrong right now, but I don't think there's any way that an average person can run a legitimate business and shoe for under $100 and still have a wage for him or herself when it's done. I think you're living hand to mouth day to day if you're shoeing for $100 or under, based on running my numbers and based on looking at this. If you're under that, you're cheating yourself some way to be able to be under that. You're either cheating yourself, or you're cheating the government, or you're gambling, or all three. Mm-hmm. And it's probably all three if you're doing it the way I used to do it.
Question in the back.
So it looks like you're making, Danvers, $85 a horse?
Yeah, and
$200 a horse,
yes,
and do 5 a day?
I average 4
Okay. And how long does that take?
all day.
Yeah.
I don't get in a hurry.
For like $85 a horse times 5 horses, and you figure it takes 7 hours, that's still $60 an hour.
I like that.
I like that. I can't do anything else for $60
Yeah.
an hour.
No, I think it's good, but it wasn't very good not that many years ago when I was charging $95 to do it. I was losing money.
And that goes back to the thought too, we have an expiration date. There's only a certain amount of period that we have to make money, and that's it. And you get to looking at that, you really want to start crunching your numbers.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. I'm doing okay at this number in relation to what I'm charging, what my fees are to shoe a horse. I'm doing fine. The problem is that I'm about 3 months away from starting my 50th year of shoeing. And the first 40 years, I was under. And, I remember when I was struggling and trying to figure out whether I should really go up on a full set of handmade shoes from $18 to $20. And I decided that the market wouldn't handle it. Mm-hmm. And I stayed at 18. I was stupid. I was a horseshoer who was out shoeing horses instead of a small business owner who was anticipating and planning for the future. And so I was a horseshoer for 40 years. I've been struggling to learn how to be a businessman for the last 10. And I'm still learning and struggling to learn.
It's hard for me to see back there because the lights are in my eyes, so. And that is tough for me to figure out because I do, now I have some trims in my business, but when on the 6-year average, I didn't trim anything. Everything I got was in 4 shoes. And it goes back to me, it's, this is my numbers. I can't tell you what your numbers are, but it kind of gives you a guideline to go on to figure out what your numbers are. If you ask me what it costs to trim a horse, I couldn't tell you whether it costs $300 or $1. I don't have them in my practice.
And what I think very much, even though we're giving you very specific numbers here, the idea is not to look at our numbers. It's to look at the concept, to look at the categories, look at the ideas, and look at the fact that all of these things need to be factored in, and the fact that it costs you a quarter to use a rasp. Every time you pull that thing out of your box, it costs you money.
If you really get to looking at trims, does it cost you less to get there in a vehicle? And this is just me asking questions because I have no clue about it. Are you going to use a rasp less because you're trimming a horse than shoeing a horse? Is it the same wear and tear on your body? I find for me, because I'm so used to shoeing, when I've got 6 or 8 trims lined up, it's tough for me to just keep spinning around there, Either one.
Where would, in your experience, where is the best time where you make the most money in the year? Like, what part of the year do you make the most money?
I'd say it's when you're busy, and that's hard for me to, that's hard for me to tell you, like what time of year do you make. My business is set up on a practice that I pretty much I don't fluctuate a ton. I stay busy pretty much year round because my horses go south. They don't slow down. They're running horses, whether, every one of them's got a show coming up next week. If you want to look at it that way, that my business keeps rolling. They've got to be shot every 30 days.
And, I think very much it varies according to individual businesses and locations, and it varies. A lot of people around me say, oh, well, I really fall off in the wintertime. Well, I don't, because I've got Purdue University 10 miles from my house. So I've got students that come in for the winter that bring their horses with them. So my business might actually pick up in the winter because I've got new people coming in that weren't there for the summer. And for the most part, I would say that my own business, I'm probably busiest in the fall because I'm doing a lot of dressage horses, and people start going into a panic as regionals come and nationals come.
And your hunt horses so you're doing a lot of drilling and tapping, and they're all going into winter packages.
Yeah, winter packages, so forth. Eventers that are transitioning to fox hunting and that sort of thing. So, but it just depends on where you are. But I can tell you that when I first moved to Indiana, that I moved up there. I was teaching school. I was shoeing part-time. And I thought, well, I'm teaching school. I'll pick up 40 head to keep on my book and stay busy shoeing horses. And I picked up 40 head, and I thought, boy, this is great, And then about the same time school started, those 40 head got their shoes pulled off, and they didn't call me again until March. And I said, oh, this is not Texas. And so the weather made a huge difference because I was doing backyard horses and 4-H horses and trail riding horses. And they just pulled the shoes off and forgot about them until spring when they wanted to get ready to trail ride again. And thankfully I was teaching school, because I would have starved that winter had I not known that. So it depends on your clientele very much as well. If you're shoeing trail riding horses, you're going to be busy during trail riding season. It just, it varies. Mark?
Do you have any tips on how to reduce these costs, either through things like buying in bulk or tax?
Absolutely.
Great.
So both of us have relatively fixed cost and a few variable costs. If we're not carrying tons of inventory, if Pat needs a bar shoe, he builds it. Same here. I might jump it into a keg shoe, or I might build it from scratch. But I'm not carrying dead and slow inventory.
And dead and slow inventory will eat you alive.
Yes. So, and we're also shoeing very specific types. You know, I said I'm shoeing mostly dressage horses. I'm shoeing a few eventers and a few backyard horses and so forth. But I'm not shoeing a variety that makes me have to carry sliding plates and toe weights and double nail pads and all those different things that may sit in my truck as slow inventory.
Which also allows you, whenever you're, carrying that inventory that goes for a specific discipline, it allows you to buy in bigger bulk. So buying in bigger bulk, you're able to, if you're spread out all over the place, but, if you're running a practice that most of your horses were in alt 1 or 2, in a, just a regular keg shoe, it allows you to buy bigger bulk in that.
So, and slow inventory is typically if something sits in your inventory for 3 months and doesn't get used, it's considered slow inventory. If it sits in your inventory for 6 months and doesn't get used, it's considered dead inventory. You have wasted your money at that point by letting it sit. It would be like taking your cash and stuffing it in your mattress, and it's not earning you anything, but it's costing you. You're not able to use it. So
this is one thing with the dead inventory. Typically at 6 months, it's completely dead. You'll never be able to make that money back on it. And the reason is because you could have taken that money that you bought that inventory with and tied it up in something else that you use every day, and it would have made you money. So on a 6 year, if it's still in your truck, and we all have it, I mean, if it's at 6 months, it's a complete loss. Everybody looks at, well, I'm going to drive it on at some point, or I'm going to get it back. No, that money that you have sitting over there doing nothing, you could have tied up into something that was going to make you money and actually made money with it. So that's the reason it's considered a complete loss.
And it's inevitable that we're going to have some of that. I mean, we've all got it in our shop. I used to do standard bred yearlings for sales. And every year I'd go out and I'd have 140 head of standard bred yearlings that I'd have to get done for the sales. And I had little swedge plates. And I bought those plates with the intent of saving some money and buying in bulk. And I got tired of trying to get 30 head of standard bred colts done in one day and getting them ready for the sale, and said, I'm not doing this anymore. And so I ended up with a bunch of swedge plates sitting in my shop that'll never go on a dressage horse. And so, we're going to end up with dead inventory. You're going to buy something that you don't like. You're going to buy something for a horse, but and it's tied to our skill level too. I mean, there was a time when I used to have a pair of heart bars in every size hanging in my truck in case I needed them, because I didn't have the skill to build them if I needed them. So they sat there and they made chiming noises for years and were worthless. So slow inventory hurts, dead inventory kills. It's just, it's a huge thing that we have to look at.
And it's one of those things as farriers, we like stuff that's shiny. How many times have you walked into a supply house and seen something that you're like, that's cool, I gotta have it. Have no clue what you're gonna put it on. No clue. Or you've got 2 tools in your box that'll do the same job, but this one looks cool.
And
I've done it,
Another thing that we have, Mark, that is that we both have, even though Pat is covering a huge area, he's got a route and a schedule for doing it. And I'm covering a smaller area, but I'm covering a really smart area in the sense that I'm got a narrow rectangle that I go. I live at the northernmost point of it, and I go 50 miles south of that point. I don't even go 5 miles north of me because it's not in my route. So somebody calls me that lives 5 miles north of me, sorry, I don't go that way.
When he told me that, I thought, you can't do that. You can't do that. And then the more I get to thinking about it, when he goes out to shoe horses every day, he passes most of his horses on the way in, on the way back. So if you've got a shoe off, it's on that route. How many times have you been Everybody talks about building a circle. How many times have you been at this side of the circle and this is the horse that's got a shoe off? You know, it's never that one that's right next door. You know, but he has built an oval or, you know, but he runs down it and comes right back. And he's built most of it right down 65.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a major interstate where he can run down it, get off of it pretty quick, stick a shoe back on the way to shoe a horse or on the way home. And I thought it was very smart when he told me that.
So having a route, knowing where you're going is a huge deal. So, yeah. Son, let me tell you, once the IRS knocks on your door, you will hand everything over to your accountant and you will say, make me legit. So it's, what I pay in taxes is everything that I owe, according to my accountant.
Well, and the other thing is too, is if you do get caught speeding, I've been caught speeding, Danvers has been caught speeding, they ask for the next year. And they ask for the next year. And they ask for the next year. And I found out as soon as they quit finding things, they quit asking. You know, so.
Unless they hate you.
Yeah, well, they ask him every year anyway. So.
If they hate you, and there's a long story behind that I won't go into on stage, but don't ever hit one of them. And you will be blacklisted. They will freeze your accounts. They will call April and say, sorry, we hate him. You get lumped into it. Don't mess with them. It doesn't pay. Pay your accountant. We're about out of time. Anybody got any more questions?
And I know it's depressing, and I know, but this is probably one of the biggest things that you really need to know. You know, how can you run a business plan without knowing what it cost you? I mean, there's just no way you can, and I did it for years, you know. But it's very, very important. You know.
Is it accurate that you can't ever nail down how much you have in it as part of your business?
I mean, I'm sure you probably could.
The question is it?
Is it accurate that you can't ever nail down exactly what it costs if part of your business is trims? You know.
No, I think you can.
I think you just have to divide it and figure out where it is. You know.
I think it's a mindset, and I know it's a mindset because I'm trying to get into that mindset. As I said, you know, I've spent the last couple of years trying to learn from this man, and because I was not a businessman, I was a horseshoer, and I went out and I shod horses, and I never thought of myself as being a businessman or a business owner. And you have to change your mindset and say, I am first and foremost a small business owner. I may like being a farrier more. I may want to be recognized or acknowledged as a farrier more, but first and foremost, I am a small business owner. And if you do not assume that mindset, then you might not be a farrier next year or the year after. Or you might be like me, and you might be at a point where you should be ending your career happily, and you're struggling to learn how to do things the right way that you should have done before. I am telling you, it is vital for you to think of yourself as a business owner, as a small business person, and that if you don't know how to do it, you know, and the biggest failing that we have as a community, as a group, is that we don't want anybody to tell us how to do our job. You want to tick me off? Tell me how to shoe a horse. But all of it, you know, you ask me, you know, about how to design my own logo. I can do that. You ask me how to do my own taxes. Shoot, I can do that. Yeah, I can do all those things. You know, no. Get rid of that. Hire professionals. Work with accountants. Work with lawyers to get incorporated. Do the things you need to do to be a small business owner so that you can then turn around and do the thing you love, which is to shoe horses.
And I will say, even though your small business association, the government, they have a lot of free services they can help.
Absolutely.
And utilize that.
Tori's reminding us that the Small Business Administration is there and that there are a lot of valuable services that they will offer to us very often, most often for free. They may direct you elsewhere that'll cost you, that it'll take fees, but it'll be minimal.
No. I think we're out of time. Is there any last minute questions or anything that,
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here.
yeah. Thanks, guys.